for my lesson, we're going to be talking about the civil rights movement in Florida. And what the students will be doing is analyzing a primary source, which is going to be a picture taken at the Tallahassee bus boycott. And then they will also read a secondary source, which is just this little article kind of introducing what the civil rights was in Florida's place in it. So what we'll do is we'll actually read this together. I'll do some guided reading. We'll do the notes in the side margins. And then I also, because these types of texts I've noticed can be difficult for fourth grade students, and this is for a fourth grade classroom. So really guiding the reading and then underlining and circling words they aren't familiar with so we can go back and talk about them. So when you look in here, you see a lot of discrimination, a lot of names, segregation, different words like that not all students might be familiar with. However, I did look at this article prior, and it will be in the presentation for you to look at. It's a pretty easy read, so different levels of students would be able to comprehend pretty well. And it's not too long, and there's pictures on there that we can talk about. And as we're filling this out, what I'd like to do is I also have this worksheet here that we can kind of go through together. So it said meet the document and then type which applies. And because we're going to be talking about different types of, primary and secondary sources, I do want them to kind of take a look at this and we can really get into what is the difference between the two. And this just says observe its parts, who wrote it, who read, received it, when was it formed, where was it formed, what's it talking about, write one sentence summarizing. So this is a really good way for them to just make sure they comprehend the whole story. So I'll just read the first paragraph here just for time's sake. The civil rights movement began when Black Americans were not treated with the same fairness and equality as white Americans. And so equality is something I would have circled there. So when we are done reading this, I'll go back and we'll talk about it. This is called discrimination. Even after the Civil War ended and slaves were freed by President Lincoln, it would take Black Americans, African Americans, many years in a long, difficult fight to get what Abraham Lincoln had intended them to have, equality. So there we see equality twice, we circled them, and discrimination, and we'll talk about it. I'll ask, does anybody know what discrimination is? And I'll take a student, I know, and, we'll go off of that, kind of let the students learn from each other, and again, to be interactive as well. And so when we get through that, we've made notes, we've circled words, we talked about those different vocabulary words. We'll go over to this worksheet and I'll let them work together, and they'll all have copies of this as well. So together they can work on this for a little bit. They don't have to completely finish it because, like I said, we are going to look at another source, and they can, whatever they didn't fill in here, they can kind of fill in the blanks on this sheet. So then they'll all receive this picture, or I can put it up on the whiteboard. And I do want them to work on this first by themselves. And I just want them to just look at the picture and write down the reactions to it. After we learned a little bit more about the Tallahassee bus boycott in these articles here, take a look at this picture, and then what do you see? What does this make you think of? How can you connect it to that boycott? Do they look happy? Or are they upset? Just different things like that. So they'll analyze this picture here. And that'll just be a few minutes of them jotting down some of their own thoughts. And then I'll lead a discussion and take some time to answer any questions that they might have. A question a student might have about this picture here is, well, if they're boycotting the buses, why is the man on the bus there? What's going on? Well, this picture was taken shortly after Alabama ruled that the segregation on the buses was unconstitutional. So in Florida, in Tallahassee, what the African Americans actually started doing was, instead of protesting the bus, they were sitting in the front. They were demonstrating that they don't think it's constitutional either, and it wasn't. So that was kind of the change there. So, and after knowing this information, they have a little more background on what's taking place in the picture. Now, what do you think about it? How has your thinking changed since before and after you had more information on it? And then to wrap everything up, the exit ticket would be students just writing a brief journal entry on the two sources, one on the secondary, one on the primary. And this should just be very brief sentences to kind of wrap up, what did you learn about the Tallahassee bus boycott? And that would be the entire lesson. It probably would be longer than 5 to 7 minutes, but it would be just one sitting. And I really like when it comes to these kinds of topics, for students to really break it down, talk about different vocabulary words, and really analyze the different sources. Because I've seen in 4th grade this semester that sometimes these history can be difficult for students, especially of different levels. Thank you.